It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. My daughter invited me to visit Dubai and said I deserved to see the world. So I went, full of hope, a suitcase packed with simple dresses and a heart wide open. But on the 5th day, she disappeared. When I went to the airport, I found out my return ticket had been canceled. No explanation, no message. Just silence. I was alone in a foreign country with nowhere to go until a man I had never seen before offered me a cup of tea. And that small gesture changed everything. Before we dive into the full story, consider subscribing to this channel for more heartfelt stories like this one. My name is Eloisa. I'm 65, with gray hair and hands worn by years of holding books and dreams. I was a teacher my whole life, the kind that wrote with chalk and heart. I lived in a small house filled with plants and laughter. I raised my daughter alone, no father around, just carefully counted coins and double doses of love. There was never a shortage of rice or hugs. Public school didn't give me much money, but it gave me purpose. And no matter how tired I was, I never stopped teaching, not at home and not in the classroom. Amanda, my only daughter, was born on a day with light rain, and from the start she was all energy and sparkle. I used to say she had a motor in her chest the way she wanted to race through life. She grew up surrounded by books, stories, and late nights while I graded papers with her asleep on the couch. I couldn't give her luxury, but I gave her everything I had. And she always wanted more. She dreamed big, spoke English before she was 12, and said she would see the world. I would smile, hiding my fear, holding my pride. On her birthdays, she always showed up. But her gifts were expensive and her conversations short. Over time, the visits became video calls. Then just messages with rushed emojis. I tried not to complain. A good mother doesn't hold her kids back, right? That's what I told myself as I fluffed the pillow on the single bed that now felt too big. I convinced myself that her silence meant she was doing well. Even retired, I kept busy. I crocheted for the neighbor, tutored kids from the neighborhood, read poetry out loud just for myself. Loneliness was loud, but I didn't let it swallow me. Some nights I called Amanda just to hear her say hello. When she didn't pick up, I'd listen to old voice notes. That one "Mother, I love you" from months ago felt like a blanket on a cold night. Sometimes I dreamed of her as a child, those brown eyes asking to sleep in my bed. I'd wake up with a tight chest, shake it off, and move on with the day. Life taught me not to expect what others can't give, but I'll admit it, the distance left a hole in me that even my books couldn't fill. Missing her felt like holding a cup without a handle. You try to grip it, but it always burns a little. I was never one to ask, not for help, not for company. But every day I wondered, does she ever remember who held her hand through those childhood fevers? Who sold their wedding ring to pay for her exchange program? I didn't want thanks. I just wanted to be remembered, to be seen. Because being a mother is like being a bridge. But even bridges need maintenance. Or one day, they collapse. When Amanda got the job offer abroad, she called and said, "Mom, this is my chance." I held my breath for a few seconds. Then I replied with a smile she couldn't see, "Go, sweetheart. I've got you from here." She moved to Dubai, a name I could barely pronounce, and never came back. At first, she called weekly, then every other week. Eventually, just short replies on WhatsApp with a red heart at the end. I tried to understand. Modern life, time zones, the rush. But something inside me started to wilt. Every notification that wasn't from her stung like a needle. I sent her recipes, photos of the yard, news from Brazil. Sometimes just a "Hi sweetie, I miss you." Most of the time, no reply. I wondered, am I being a burden? Is she ashamed of having such a simple mom? The strangest part was how active she seemed on social media. Fancy dinners, golden landscapes, people in suits and gowns. And there I was, in slippers and an apron, watching it all from my little phone screen. It felt like she belonged to a world where I didn't fit anymore. One time I tried to comment on a photo, "Beautiful mom misses you." She deleted it. After that, I never dared to write again. I remember one random Sunday, after Mass, I stood in front of the church watching mothers and children hugging. A woman asked me, "And your daughter, Eloisa?" I just replied, "She's good working." But inside, my throat tightened. Because working is not the same as forgetting. And I no longer knew what she remembered of me, besides the name saved on her phone. Some mornings I'd make coffee and set out 2 cups, just to pretend she still came by. In a soft voice, I'd talk to the empty chair, "How was your day?" Then I'd wash everything and tell myself it was just silly longing. But the truth was, that absence felt like mourning. Not of death, but of a presence that slowly disappeared without goodbye. A kind of abandonment with a passport. Even so, I still believed she'd come back. That she'd knock on the door with that crooked smile and hold me tight. Every mother has that stubborn hope. Mine survived on crumbs. A new photo. A rare voice note. An old memory. I clung to those like someone holding on to the edge of a boat in deep water. And even though I was sinking a bit inside, I smiled to keep it from showing. The phone rang on a rainy Tuesday while I was watering my ferns. I saw her name on the screen and my heart jumped like a kid at a party. "Hi Mom, are you busy?" she asked. I replied with a shaky voice, "Never for you, honey." Amanda took a breath and said, "I want to take you to Dubai. You need to see the world." I thought I heard it wrong. I asked what, and she repeated it, smiling this time. My knees went weak. I stood in the kitchen with the phone shaking in my hand, her words spinning in my ears. Dubai, me, the woman who never left her own state, she said she had everything planned. Flights, hotel, everything. Said I needed to live a little. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or say thank you. I just said, "All right, sweetie, if it means seeing you, I'll go." I hung up slowly and stared at the tile wall, like the world had flipped upside down. That night, I didn't sleep. I mentally went through all my clothes. None seemed right for Dubai. I put lotion on my hands for the first time in months. Pulled down the old suitcase and started packing my fears, my doubts, and a blouse Amanda loved as a child. My pillow barely touched my head. Every hour I wondered, does she want to show me something, or maybe try to reconnect the next day? I told my neighbor. She nearly dropped her bread. "Aloysia, you're going to Dubai, girl, that's fancy." I gave a shy laugh. But inside I felt like a teenager about to fall in love for the first time. It wasn't about the city. It was about my daughter. She finally wanted me close. That meant more than any luxury. My heart was singing an old song of hope. I spent the next days watching videos about Dubai on YouTube, trying to understand where I was about to set foot. Everything looked magical, golden, enormous. I was fascinated by the lights, the buildings, the clothes. And at the same time I was terrified of messing up. How do you say thank you in Arabic? Can I wear a headscarf? I felt like a student again, and that gave me a breath of youth. Before the trip, I left a note in the kitchen drawer. If I don't come back, I was happy I went to see my daughter. I also left a photo of us in an envelope that smelled like lavender. That trip was more than crossing oceans. It was an attempt to reconnect two lives that had drifted apart like silent tectonic plates, and I was ready to be found again. When the plane landed and the doors opened, dry perfumed air filled my lungs. Dubai felt like another planet. Everything was shiny, over the top, spotless. Amanda was waiting in the terminal wearing sunglasses and a designer dress. She hugged me quickly like a business handshake. "Let's go, the driver's waiting," she said. Still dizzy from the flight, I followed her with short steps and wide eyes. From the car, I saw tall palm tree signs I couldn't read and cars that looked like spaceships. She spoke on the phone in English, giving orders about a meeting while I stared at my hands, trying to stay composed. We arrived at a fancy hotel. Went up without much talking. In the room, she pointed at the bed and said, "Room service is available. Let me know if you need anything." Then she left. Like I was a guest in a world where she was the manager. In the days that followed, I saw Amanda like a mirage. She passed by, waved, said I'm going to dinner with coworkers, and vanished. I ate lunch alone. Stayed up late. She never invited me along. I really tried to understand. Maybe it was work. Maybe she was just used to this life. But it started to hurt like a hidden thorn. I had crossed the world to see my daughter, and it felt like she barely saw me. One afternoon, I went to the lobby to ask how the local cafe worked. The attendant was so kind I nearly cried. A stranger treating me like family. I went back to my room with a small Arabic dessert and a tear hidden on my cheek. I turned on the TV. Everything in Arabic. And still it felt more familiar than Amanda's presence. The room was beautiful, but the silence was sharp. I tried to connect. One day, I went to her room, knocked gently, and asked, "Sweetie, wanna have some tea downstairs?" She replied without looking up from her laptop, "Not now, Mom, maybe later." Later became never. I walked back slowly, slippers dragging on the soft carpet. I knew it wasn't about the tea. It was about being present with her. But maybe in her new world I was just a misplaced shadow? Even so, I smiled. Took photos. Sent them to the neighbor group chat. Pretended I was living the dream. Because sometimes pretending is the only way to stay. To not explode, not scream, not cry right there in that luxury hotel. I wanted to enjoy whatever time I had with her, even if it was in crumbs. Even if I was alone on the same floor. Because mothers learn to live on leftovers when love is the main course. and I still believed something could change. I woke up to the sound of the housekeeper cleaning the hallway. The silence in the room next door felt strange. Amanda usually left late. I knocked on her door. No answer. I waited a few minutes and tried again. My heartbeat sped up. I went back to my room and grabbed my phone. No message, no call. I called her 3 times. It rang and rang, but nothing. The emptiness was louder than any ringtone. I put on a simple dress and went downstairs. At the front desk, I tried to stay calm, but my voice was already shaking. My daughter is not in her room. Could you check if she went out? The clerk typed a few things, checked the system, and said her checkout was completed at 7:23. Something locked inside me. Check out, but she didn't say anything. The woman only nodded with a neutral look. Suddenly, the floor felt too far away. I sat in one of the chairs near the reception desk. I grabbed my phone. Tried WhatsApp, phone call, email. No answer anywhere. I opened her social media. All blocked. Every account. It was as if Amanda had erased her own mother from her life. A digital cancellation. I looked around hoping this was a misunderstanding. But the truth was right there. Clear. Cold. My daughter had left without even saying goodbye. A security guard approached and asked if I needed help. I took a deep breath, gave a shy smile, and said I think I was forgotten. He tried to hide the pity in his eyes. I thanked him and sat back down with my suitcase on my lap, as if it could anchor me in the middle of a storm. Every zipper felt like a silent scream. There I was, a 65-year-old woman alone in a country I did not understand in words or gestures. The lobby lights were too white, too harsh. People rushed by with rolling suitcases and no one saw me. But I saw myself. And what I saw was a mother abandoned, a forgotten tourist, a woman tossed aside by her own daughter. I felt shame, then sadness, then anger. But none of it softened the sharpest pain, the shock. The shock of someone who never imagined that abandonment could arrive wrapped in silence. I stayed there for hours staring at my phone like someone waiting for a miracle. Nothing. No word. No sign. Not even an emoji. It was my 6th day in Dubai and my daughter had left me. In that cold lobby between luggage and unfamiliar voices, I began to understand that something inside me had changed forever. Because when your daughter leaves but takes your voice, your affection, and your name with her, all that remains is one question. Why? It took time to realize this was not a simple disappearance. I went back to the desk and asked about my own reservation. The clerk looked at the screen for a long moment and said, "Your stay ends tomorrow." A chill ran up my back. But my daughter said it was until the end of the week. He replied, "Her reservation was closed and yours was linked to the same account." My mouth went dry. I went to the lobby computer and checked the airline website. I typed my booking code, my heart racing. Ticket canceled. 3 words that felt like a slap. I closed my eyes. I still wanted to believe in a mistake and a glitch. But the screen was clear. Amanda had canceled everything. My return flight. My hotel room. My right to exist beside her in that country. I tried calling again. Phone off. I sent a message, "Sweetie, are you okay?" It was never delivered. I checked Instagram, blocked. Facebook, blocked. WhatsApp, blocked. It was official. My daughter had erased me like someone crossing a name off a list. I was not a mother anymore. I was a burden, a weight, an unwanted presence. And the worst part, without any reason. No fight, no warning. I held onto the counter so I would not collapse. A man behind me held my arm and said, "Are you all right, ma'am?" I shook my head and whispered, "I think my daughter forgot me here." He did not understand. He did not have to. I stepped away embarrassed. I grabbed my suitcase, which felt heavier now. I sat again in the lobby. A foreigner in every sense, in language, in land, and in the heart of the one who was supposed to love me. My phone stayed silent. Even the group chats were quiet. I did not want to tell anyone. How could I say my daughter brought me to Dubai and abandoned me here? I imagined what they would say. How awful. How ungrateful. What a crime. But the harshest judgment was my own. I who gave everything. I who sold an old car to pay for her exchange program years ago. And now she cut even my way home. The humiliation was not loud. It was tiny. It was the way the world kept moving while I fell apart in silence. It was seeing staff smile at tourists while I sank into that leather seat. It was knowing that even if I screamed, no one there would understand my language. Not the words. Not the tears I swallowed to avoid disturbing the place. I was alone. With a suitcase, a passport, and a pain that did not fade even with a time zone change. The chair had a tall back, wide arms, and the smell of expensive perfume. But it felt like sitting on the cold floor of reality. I hugged my suitcase like it was a piece of myself. No one looked, no one saw. I, a 65-year-old woman left in a hotel lobby in Dubai, with my heart collapsing quietly. The suitcase on my lap felt like a shield and a tomb. Inside were my clothes and my wounded dignity. A couple walked past taking selfies. They smiled, laughed, kissed. Nearby a family spoke loudly in French, kids running, father holding a map, and me standing still, invisible between worlds that were not mine. The words around me swirled, all foreign, none of them able to say I am hurting. Loneliness there had a color: beige, gold, clear glass and soft carpet, but inside me it was gray. My stomach growled, but I had no hunger, only a knot, a hollow space no food could fill. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to compose myself. I took a scarf from my bag and wiped my eyes before anyone noticed. I stood up, walked around the lobby just to look busy. But soon I returned to the same seat. It was all I had now. A chair, a suitcase, and an absence heavier than I could carry. I thought about asking for help. But what would I say? Hi, my daughter abandoned me here. I pictured their confused faces, the questions, the shame. What if they called the police? What if they did not believe me? It was all so surreal that even I struggled to believe it. I tried to remember the happy days. The day Amanda gave me my first phone. The note she wrote at graduation: I owe you everything, Mom. Where had that daughter gone? Time dragged. Light shifted through the windows, but inside me it was always night. I started writing on a piece of paper I found in my bag, just to stay sane. I am in Dubai, alone. I was left here. It felt like a castaway's diary. I signed it Aloysa. I put the paper in my wallet. Maybe no one else cared, but I still wanted to leave traces. Even if only for myself to remember I existed in that place. I did not know what to do next. I only knew I could not stay there forever. But where would I go? How could I ask for help in a language that was not mine? I felt like a lost child in an old woman's body. And still something inside me said, get up, Aloysa, even if you fall again. Because even forgotten, even discarded, I was still breathing. And while there is breath, there is fight. In that small spark of courage, something or someone finally approached. I was looking down at my feet when I saw a pair of polished shoes stop in front of me. I raised my eyes slowly. A man in a light suit with a trimmed beard and a gentle look stood watching me with curiosity. He leaned slightly and asked in English, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" His accent was Middle Eastern. I froze for a second, took a deep breath and whispered, "Yes, I think I need help." He introduced himself as Farid and offered his hand calmly. I shook it lightly, my cold fingers brushing against his warm, steady palm. Farid seemed to be in his early 60s, but his eyes looked older and kinder. I straightened up, trying to hide my shame. He crouched a little to meet my height and asked softly, "Are you alone?" I nodded with eyes ready to spill. "My daughter left. Is she coming back?" he asked. I had no answer. I looked down. He understood. And in that moment, his sympathy did not hurt me. It healed. It was the first human look I had received in days. He offered me tea. I thought it was just politeness. But when I stood and followed him to the hotel cafe, it felt like something inside me stood up too. For the first time since everything began, I felt seen. We sat at a quiet table between tall columns and golden lights. The waiter brought a pot of spiced tea whose smell made me close my eyes for a moment. Farid said, "I like to observe." And today I saw someone who needed more than a seat in the lobby. I wanted to thank him, but my voice failed. I just smiled, a shaky smile. He understood. We barely talked at first. He waited for my pauses, my silences. That was rare. I told part of the story. Not everything. Just that my daughter had left me and I did not know what to do. Farid did not widen his eyes or act shocked. He only said, "I am sorry, but you are here now. And so am I." The calm in his voice soothed the chaos inside me. He asked nothing more. He only offered presence. And in that hotel cafe surrounded by tourists and fine china, I felt less foreign, more human. Before we parted, he said, "You do not need to decide anything now. But if you want to talk again, I will be around." He wrote his number on a napkin, folded it carefully, and placed it in my hand. Then he nodded gently and walked away. I stayed there for a while, without hurry, feeling as if someone had pulled my soul back from the bottom. It was more than I ever expected. The next day, I sat in the same lobby chair waiting without waiting. And Farid appeared. I was not surprised. He walked lightly without urgency. He greeted me with a smile and asked, "Would you join me for tea again?" I nodded. It was not an invitation you refused. We went to a smaller, cozier cafe. The tables had floral cloths and the soft music made the place warm, almost familiar. This time I talked more. I told him everything. The blocked messages, the closed reservation, the cancelled flight. Each word felt sharp as it left my mouth. I do not think she wants me around, I said, eyes lowered. Farid did not interrupt. He only listened. And that alone disarmed me. When I finished, he said, "You are not a burden. You are a mother. And mothers should never be left behind." Farid told me he owned a chain of small businesses. He had lost his mother young, and his grandmother raised him with firmness and tenderness. He spoke of her with deep respect. He said that every time he saw an older woman alone, he thought of his grandmother. "She taught me that respect begins at home," he said, meeting my eyes. A lump rose in my throat. I wanted to answer, but all I could do was hold my cup with both hands, like it was warmth itself. He did not offer charity. He offered dignity. He asked where I was staying. I told him my room would end that night. "Come with me," he said with quiet certainty. "We will take care of this." I hesitated. Life had taught me to be wary. But something in Farid inspired peace. I agreed. We went together to another hotel a bit farther away, simpler but beautiful. He paid for the new room without waiting for a single thank you. "Stay as long as you need. You are welcome here," he said before leaving me at the door. I stood there taking it all in. The white sheets, the curtain swaying, the lamp glowing softly. It felt like a small rebirth, a pause in the chaos. I opened my suitcase calmly this time. I took out the blouse Amanda loved, folded it neatly, and placed it on the bed, as if saying, "Now I choose for me." Before sleeping, I checked my phone for the 100th time. Still blocked. Still nothing. But for the first time, the emptiness did not hurt as much. Someone out there, a stranger, had reached out when blood ties had broken. And that night, I fell asleep without a wet pillow. Just a warm cup of tea in my stomach and the quiet hope that something new had begun. Farid took me to a quiet cafe hidden in a garden, with outdoor tables and the scent of cardamom in the air. We sat across from each other like two old friends, reunited after decades. He spoke gently, with honest pauses, never in a rush to leave. Every time I spoke, he listened with rare attention. When I mentioned I was a teacher, he smiled and said, "You shaped the future." That broke me a little. I told him about the years in public school, the notes from students, the snacks shared. I spoke of Amanda as a child, the drawing she gave me with the words "best mom in the world." Each memory came with a sting in my chest, but Farid never looked away. He kept his eyes on me, as if carefully holding every piece of my story. Then he said, "You won't be alone here." Those words felt like a warm blanket after a storm. My eyes filled with tears, but I held them back. "People like you deserve respect," he added. And I wanted to cry right there, because it had been so long since anyone said something like that. Too long. I took a deep breath. For the first time in days, it didn't hurt to breathe. I let myself smile, a small smile. But mine. We talked for hours. About books, memorable teachers, family recipes. He told me he lost his wife 5 years ago. She was a teacher too. A rare soul. His eyes shone as he remembered her. I listened in respectful silence, wondering what it would feel like to be remembered with such tenderness. At that simple table, two souls with similar scars shared tea and humanity. The sun began to set, painting the sky in copper shades. Farid looked at the horizon and said, "What happened to you was wrong. But sometimes life makes up for it with encounters." I didn't answer. I just held my cup a little tighter. And inside me, something started to shift. A quiet feeling, almost shy belonging. Even so far from home, there was someone who saw value where my own daughter only saw a burden. Before we said goodbye, he handed me a folded paper with an address. "If you'd like to see a special place tomorrow, let me know." I took it and tucked it away with care. He didn't say anything else, just nodded and walked off, like someone who knows when to leave the stage. I stayed there a little longer, listening to the city breathe and feeling like maybe I was finally starting to come back to myself. I woke up early, still with that strange feeling of sleeping in another country, but now with less fear. I looked out the window and saw the sun brushing against golden buildings. I put on my simplest clothes, tied my hair, and went downstairs. Farid was already waiting in the lobby, holding a small bouquet of local flowers. "Just to start the day right," he said. I thanked him, unsure how to react to so much kindness, and we left, this time in silence, but a good kind of silence. The car was quiet, lightly scented, with soft instrumental music playing. Farid said he had something to show me. "I want you to meet my sister Layla. She runs a cultural center. I think you'll like it." I nodded, still not sure what to expect. When we arrived, I saw a modest building with light walls and open windows. Inside, women's voices echoed with laughter, conversation, and instruments playing. Layla welcomed me with a long hug and a smile that felt like home. A strong woman with kind eyes and warm hands. Farid left us there. She walked me through simple rooms filled with life women sewing, painting, learning languages. Here we welcome refugee women. We give them classes, workshops, and most of all hope. I was moved just seeing it. I didn't expect my day to end surrounded by so much female strength. Layla showed me an empty room with a whiteboard and a few chairs. You said you were a teacher. Have you ever thought about teaching English to these women? I froze for a second. Then I smiled. I couldn't remember the last time someone offered me a space instead of charity. I said yes, my heart beating like it was exam day. She handed me a notebook and a pen. You can start whenever you like. They're going to love you. That day I sat with 5 women. Some shy, some curious. I wrote on the board, my name is Eloisa. They repeated in different accents, eyes full of focus. I felt alive. I felt useful. I felt whole. Between accents and grammar mistakes, a classroom was born where my pain turned into a bridge. I was no longer just a forgotten mother. I was a woman who had something to give. And that saved me. Before I left, Layla hugged me again. Some people show up by accident, but stay because they're meant to. I left with a notebook under my arm and a heart full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Farid was waiting at the door with a quiet smile. So what did you think? And I answered with a phrase that came out without thinking, this is where I needed to be. He nodded, and we walked in silence with peace in our hearts. Every morning I woke before the alarm, put on my lightest dress, and walked to the center with confident steps. I carried a notebook, a few English words, and the will to give back what I was receiving. The women waited with shy smiles but eyes hungry for knowledge. I wrote on the board and they repeated between laughter and sweet stumbles. It was simple, but it meant everything. On the second day, one of the students gave me a colorful scarf. For you to wear, teacher. I almost cried. I hugged her tightly. It was the first gift I'd received in years that didn't come from obligation. On the third day, another brought homemade bread. We shared it during the break, sitting on cushions on the floor. These were women who had lost so much and yet still gave. That taught me more than any dictionary ever could. I started learning their names. Zara with her big eyes and hidden smile. Amina who laughed loud every time she messed up the verbs. Noor who wrote slowly like she was stitching the words together. Every day brought a new connection, a new bridge. I didn't think much about the pain anymore. That feeling of abandonment was still there. But now it shared space with something stronger, belonging. One afternoon Farid stopped by and saw me in the middle of class explaining the difference between can and can't. He peeked through the door, then left quietly. The next day he left a note, you have a light you don't even notice. I kept that note in my wallet next to the napkin with his number. It gave me strength, knowing someone saw value in me not for what I meant to someone else but for who I truly was. The cultural center became my emotional shelter. It wasn't a job or a duty. It was where my soul could breathe. Layla said you brought a new calm to them. I smiled, unsure what to say. Maybe because for the first time in a long while I didn't have to explain myself. There no one saw me as a burden or a forgotten mother. I was just Eloisa, a teacher, a woman, present. At night I returned to the hotel with tired feet but a light heart. I lay down, replayed the day's words, and fell asleep to the sound of feminine voices softly saying goodnight. And that's exactly what those nights were becoming, even in a foreign land. Good. Because even far from home I was finally where I always dreamed of being, needed, heard, useful. At the end of the week, Layla came in with a folded newspaper and a spark in her eyes. Look who made the front of the culture section. It was me. A photo of me from the side smiling while writing on the board, today is a beautiful day. The headline read, Brazilian teacher turns pain into purpose in the heart of Dubai. I was speechless. My face flushed. It felt strange seeing myself in real newsprint, but also beautiful. The article told my story. It said I had been left behind, but still chose to start over. It used words that made my throat tighten: dignity, resilience, love for teaching. I read it slowly, like I was rereading my life from a new angle. I folded the paper and tucked it into my bag with care. It wasn't just a news story. It was a mirror this time, without shame in the reflection. The next day my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. It was Amanda. Mom, I saw something. Are you in a newspaper in Dubai? Her voice was different, fast, nervous. I confirmed with a flat yes. She laughed awkwardly. Wow, you could have told me you were famous now. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. And for the first time I didn't apologize. I just said you didn't ask where I was. She stumbled over the reply. Said a friend had shown her the article. Everyone's talking about it. My mom in the news. Who would have thought? I closed my eyes for a second. Her voice felt unsettled, like she'd lost control of a story she thought belonged to her. I let her talk. Until she said, "Can we meet?" I took a deep breath. That invitation from someone who erased me felt like a punch and a whisper at the same time. It took me hours to answer. I walked to the fountain at the hotel, sat on a bench, and let the water speak for me. I looked at the sky and remembered everything I had lived these past days. It wasn't just about seeing Amanda. It was about deciding if I still wanted to be seen by her the same way. In the end, I wrote sure, tomorrow, at a cafe near the cultural center. Then I turned off my phone. No anxiety. No blind hope. Just the strength of someone who finally chose herself first. That night, I opened the newspaper again and looked at my photo slowly. The gray hair, the scarf around my neck, the calm expression. I touched the page and thought, if my daughter is coming back now, maybe it's because the world saw me before she did. And that hurt, but it also set me free. Because when the truth makes the front page, lies don't have as much room to hide. The hotel room bell rang in the afternoon. I looked through the peephole and for a moment thought I was imagining things. Amanda, standing there in elegant clothes, perfect makeup, and a fake smile that didn't match the moment. I opened the door slowly. She said, "Mom, what a nice surprise." As if she hadn't left me alone days earlier with a suitcase on my lap, my body froze. My voice took time to come out. She walked in uninvited, looking around like she was inspecting furniture. "I saw your article." "Wow, you're famous now. You! That's amazing." She sat on the armchair and crossed her legs like we were at a holiday visit. I stood by the window watching her reflection in the glass. The same daughter, but with a different presence. Like the mask had slipped a bit. And for the first time, I didn't rush to please her. "You could have told me," she said again with a laugh. So many people tagged me, I was so confused. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Then I said, "You wouldn't have seen it if you hadn't blocked me." She went quiet. The room's air changed. Amanda bit her lip and muttered, "I was just overwhelmed, Mom." It wasn't personal. I looked at her like I was seeing a stranger wearing the face of someone I once loved. She tried to change the subject. Asked how I was complimented. The hotel said she didn't know I was this strong. It sounded like sarcasm, or maybe genuine surprise. But none of her words had roots. They were loose leaves trying to cover the emptiness she created. I wanted to ask, "Why are you here? Why now?" But I didn't, because part of me already knew the answer. And I didn't need to hear it from her. Mid-conversation, Amanda suggested we go out, get coffee, and maybe even do some shopping. To reconnect, she said. I held back a laugh. Reconnect after deleting me from her life, but I took a breath. This wasn't the moment to shout. It was time to see how far she'd take this act. I just said, "Coffee, yes. Tomorrow. Near the center." She nodded with a rushed smile, grabbed her bag, and left the same way she arrived without asking permission. I stood there for a few minutes staring at the closed door, my head spinning. I tried to figure out if this was guilt strategy or just remorse wearing makeup. Deep down it didn't matter. Amanda was back. But I wasn't the same. And maybe she felt that too, even if she couldn't name it. Because when the absence is too long, the return never fits the same place. The cafe was on a quiet corner of the city with wooden tables, oversized mugs, and soft music. I arrived early, chose a table by the window, ordered mint tea, and waited. Amanda came 10 minutes later wearing sunglasses even though there was no sun. She sat down quickly and said, "Sorry I'm late." I nodded. I looked calm outside, but inside my heart beat like a muffled drum. She started talking nonstop like she'd rehearsed it. "Mom, I wanted to apologize seriously. That day I was under so much pressure. It was a hard week. Meetings, demanding clients. I lost control." With every sentence I wanted to ask, "So abandoning your mother was the solution?" But I let her talk. I wanted to hear it all. Or maybe I just wanted to see how far she'd go pretending to believe her own words. Amanda lowered her sunglasses. She looked into my eyes for a second and said, "I know I messed up, but you understand, right?" That question made my blood boil. Understand being erased, canceled, abandoned. And now I was supposed to be the one to understand. I took a slow sip of tea, set the cup down, and answered calmly, "Understand isn't But I heard what you said." She bit her lip, restless. She knew it wouldn't be that easy. I tried not to fall into the trap of emotion. Amanda had done this before. Tears, apologies, then silence. It was a cycle, and this time I wasn't going back to it. I said you erased me. You left me alone in a foreign country. Not even a single message. That wasn't just stress, Amanda. That was a choice. She lowered her eyes. For the first time she had no words. The waiter brought our coffees, but neither of us touched the cups. Silence sat between us for long minutes. I looked at her like someone looks into a broken mirror, parts still recognizable, others already beyond repair. Amanda cleared her throat and tried to smile. Can we start over? I took a deep breath. There was truth in her tone, but also discomfort. Maybe more fear of what people might think than real remorse. Even so, I didn't reject it. But I didn't embrace it either. I just said, let's see what time does. I stood up, paid the bill, and left a generous tip. She got up behind me with hesitant steps. On the way out, she touched my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for listening." I nodded, and we each went our separate ways. She got into a black car. I into a regular taxi. And in the window I saw my reflection, not the mother begging for affection, but a woman who now knew how to say enough without raising her voice. The next day, Amanda found me outside the cultural center. She said she wanted to talk again. We walked in silence to a bench nearby under the shade of a tall palm. She looked different, less polished, more reserved. She sat beside me and said, "Yesterday was hard for me." I just looked. Let the silence do what words couldn't. She went on, "Maybe I never really understood what it meant to be a mother. Until now." I took a deep breath. I held her hand not with affection, but with firmness. I looked her in the eyes, not lowering mine for a second. And I said, "Amanda, what you did was abandonment." She trembled. I tried to keep my tone calm, but my words cut like a blade. "You took me out of the country, left me alone, blocked me, gave me no answer. That's not a mistake. That's a decision." She didn't try to argue. She just lowered her head. I kept going, voice shaky but steady. "But I'm no longer that quiet mother who accepts everything. The one who swallows her pain just to keep the peace. No. Today I'm a woman. I'm a soul. I'm a presence. You can try to erase me, but I'm still here." Amanda started to cry. But I didn't comfort her, because sometimes tears come too late, and comforting before awareness only feeds the mistake. She tried to say something, but I raised my hand, asking her to let me finish. "You hurt me, Amanda, and you hurt the image I had of us. But that didn't break me. It changed me. I found out I can still be useful, that I'm still strong, that my worth doesn't depend on your recognition." She nodded, crying in silence. And for a moment there was the girl I once raised, lost, scared, but still there. I stood and said, "I'm going back to Brazil tomorrow. My time here is over for now, but my story, that keeps going." Amanda looked at me like someone realizing that time had passed and taken with it the control she thought she had. "Mom, I'm sorry, really." I shook my head. "I don't want words, Amanda. I want change. Only time will tell me who you are now." And I walked away, the warm wind lifting the hem of my dress. Behind me I heard her footsteps hesitate. Then nothing. Just the sound of my own steps steady against the stone path. I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt relief. Because for the first time I had said out loud everything I had swallowed for years. And that wasn't a breakup. It was a rebirth. The Eloisa who left São Paulo for Dubai was a shadow. Was a shadow. Was a shadow. The Eloisa who left São Paulo for Dubai was a shadow. Was a shadow. The one returning now was a whole woman. On the day of my flight, my suitcase was lighter and my soul fuller. Layla came to say goodbye with a date cake and a handwritten card. The students hugged me all at once, each one saying thank you with sweet accents. It felt like leaving a party I hadn't expected to be invited to, but where I'd been made to feel like the guest of honor. The taxi arrived, and outside Farid was waiting with his hands behind his back. He opened the door for me like an old-fashioned gentleman. We got in the car. The city moved past the window like a film I was still trying to understand. On the way he handed me the envelope with the ticket. "Your daughter should be doing this, but some things can't wait for others to learn." I just held the envelope, unable to say anything. Sometimes silence is also gratitude. At the airport we sat side by side like two old friends in a quiet goodbye. He looked up and said, "You planted seeds here." Then turned to me and added, "I hope you find flowers there." I smiled, eyes already wet. "I've already started, Farid." Inside me. He nodded. He handed me a small box with a pendant shaped like a book. "To remind you your story isn't over." I held it tight. When they called my flight, he didn't hug me tight. He just placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Never forget who you are. Or what you've done here." I nodded. I walked through the gate with slow, steady steps. I looked back one last time. He was still there, still calm, smiling like someone who knows it doesn't take much to change the course of someone's life. Just presence. On the plane, I buckled in, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. I didn't feel fear or emptiness. For the first time in a long time, I knew who I was. And even though I was heading back to the same address, my soul wasn't the same. Aloysa, the mother. Aloysa, the woman. Aloysa, the teacher. All of me coexisted now with new strength. As if I had finally learned how to take up space in the world and within myself. As the plane climbed, I looked out the window and made a silent promise I will never forget myself again. Then I took the pendant from the box and clasped it around my neck. It was light, almost weightless. But the meaning was heavy. It was a reminder that even abandoned, I bloomed. And sometimes salvation comes from where we least expect it. Like a cup of tea offered by a stranger in the middle of the desert. Coming back to Brazil felt like re-entering an old house with new eyes. The street was the same. The neighbors still cared for their plants. But I was no longer the same woman who had left. The first few days I stayed quiet, reorganizing my soul. Until one morning I saw the notebook I had brought from Dubai, and I realized I still had words to teach. I walked to the church on the corner, spoke with the social worker, and offered to teach. She said yes right away. I started with 3 students, women with tired eyes and calloused hands. One sold pastries. Another did laundry. The third cared for 4 kids. But all of them were thirsty. Thirsty to learn. Thirsty to exist. I taught the basics, days of the week, numbers, simple phrases. Every mistake brought laughter. Every success, a sparkle in their eyes. And there in the back of a community room, my life started beating with purpose again. Soon the class grew. More women came. From far neighborhoods. Some with babies in their arms. I wrote on the board and listened to laughter stories, questions. One of them said, "Dona Aloysa, you're different. You look at us like we matter." I smiled and replied, "That's because you do." And in that moment, I realized what I had lived through wasn't tragedy. It was path. And now, it was mission. A local reporter heard my story through Leela. She reached out and did another piece. This time here. The headline read, "After being left behind in Dubai, Brazilian teacher turns pain into lessons of hope." The story went viral. I got messages from Portugal, Argentina, Mozambique. Women telling their stories, their scars, their triumphs. People calling me an inspiration. I didn't know how to respond. I just felt it. Some asked, "How can you forgive your daughter?" But I never said I forgave. I just said I understood. That not everyone knows what to do with love that asks for nothing in return. Amanda started reaching out again little by little. She sends messages. Asks how I'm doing. Sometimes she calls. We're not close. But we're no longer strangers. And that for now is enough. Because I've learned I don't need someone to come back in order to keep going. Today, when I step into that simple room with an old whiteboard and mismatched chairs, I feel richer than ever. Not with money, but with something no abandonment could take from me, my worth. And if the world needs anything right now, it's this. Women who recognize each other even when life tries to erase them. I was erased, but God lit a fire in me. Maybe you're listening to this with tears in your eyes, or maybe with anger. Maybe you know that pain too well of not being remembered, of being seen as leftover or burden. I know it, but here's what I've learned: sometimes what feels like the end is just a curve. And some curves take us straight to where we belong. I didn't want to be forgotten in Dubai, but it was there that the world reminded me who I am. If you've gone through something like this, don't think you're alone. Every woman full of love and silence has a story worth telling. And more than that, worth being heard. So if this story touched you, if you saw a piece of yourself in it, I invite you to stay, to subscribe, to hear more voices. Because what healed me was knowing I wasn't alone. That my pain was also someone else's mirror. Some stories we live to survive. Others we tell, so no one has to go through them alone. This one I lived. With tears, yes. But also with new beginnings, helping hands, warm tea, improvised lessons, and the kind of forgiveness that's possible. I wasn't abandoned for nothing. I was led exactly where I needed to be. And today I can say it was all worth it. Even the pain. Amanda still carries her own struggles. Maybe one day she understand it all. Maybe not. But now I know my love for her doesn't depend on return. It's mature love. Love without chains. I'm a mother. But before that, I'm Aloysa. And the woman who was reborn in Dubai will never forget herself again. So if you believe in the power of truth, of love, and of starting over, leave a comment with where you're listening from. Share your name, your city, your story if you want. Let's create a space where no woman feels invisible. Here you matter. Here you're seen. Here you have a voice. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. And come back often. Because sometimes it's in the abandonment that God writes our most beautiful beginnings.